You ever have one of those periods when you're just tired and just like you go to school or work and you go back home and you don't do anything in the meantime because you simply don't have the energy for it? And even when you're at home, you can't really find the motivation to do the stuff that you enjoyed before. Like honestly, last week I tried to cheer myself up by rewatching an episode of Orange High School Host Club. And you know, if even a healthy dose of kiss kiss fall in love doesn't cheer you up, thinking that maybe you weren't born to be wild, you were more born to be mild. But in the end, I still take care of myself. I take a shower, I drink enough, I eat, I function at work. But some people take these kind of frustrations out on themselves, and that is kind of what I wanted to talk about. Non-suicidal self-injury is usually something that most people would call self-harm. It's defined by direct and intentional destruction of your own body tissue without suicidal intentions, and it has to be something that is not culturally accepted, because we still have piercings and tattoos in the West and a lot of traditions all over the world where you kind of harm your body in a way. So non-suicidal self-injury includes things like cutting yourself, burning your skin, scraping your skin, hitting and biting yourself. It might be something that you recognize either within yourself or others, or something that you can see on TV or movies. So during adolescence, 10 to 40% actually do non-suicidal self-harm. The average age of onset is 12 to 16, which is like a crazy age to be doing stuff like this to yourself. Most of the people who self-harm happen to be girls. So there are a lot of different reasons why people would do this, and the main reasons are, I guess, to regulate negative emotions that they're going through, to punish themselves, or in a way influence others, or find a way to communicate with them, which they're not able to do with words. So this is something that often happens after they had a fight with someone else, and you know, they're angry, and sometimes they're ashamed or they're disgusted at themselves, and you know, as soon as you hate yourself and you start doing it, self-harming is something that quickly becomes a familiar coping strategy. So after you relieved yourself and relieved the stress that you have built up in your body by harming yourself, some people do feel ashamed, but at the same time it's so hard to stop. So people end up being ashamed or guilty, you know, that they actually started doing that. So it's also something that a lot of people want to keep a secret because they feel that people won't be able to understand why they're doing it. This has to do with, on one side, affect regulation, where people experience very, you know, crazy emotions, and they feel like, you know, they got a wave of feelings overwhelming them. And at the other hand, it also has a lot to do with, you know, conflicts and difficulties with other people. So if you already have a very difficult time, you know, regulating your emotions, dealing with your emotions without completely getting overwhelmed and overflowing, and then everything gets triggered because you also have, you know, a fight with someone else, that's usually, you know, when you're in a very vulnerable state to do it. So think of things like bullying, being rejected, being harassed, being victimized, and being shamed for having a really hard time, or just having a fight with a friend. A lot of it is based on negative self-evaluation. I think like the big majority of people harming themselves have a really low self-esteem. I mean, these are kids who are being abused, criticized, ridiculed, bullied, ostracized, rejected in some way or another, so they start believing that they need to punish themselves. And to punish themselves, they hurt themselves. And then you end up hurting yourself, and then you blame yourself for doing something like that. You criticize yourself in your head, and then you end up punishing yourself again, either mentally or physically, by self-harming. A lot of people who self-harm also happen to have a diagnosis of depression and anxiety, but if you haven't had a diagnosis like that, or you've never been to a therapist, that doesn't mean that you don't have, you know, risk factors to develop this kind of behavior. Because sometimes people don't get validated for their feelings, and they start feeling, you know, ashamed, but also isolated, because you have to believe normally that people would have compassion for you, and if you find out that nobody cares about your feelings, or they, you know, they judge you or blame you for having those feelings, you've kind of you've kind of gone disconnected from other people and you don't feel valued or you don't feel loved. So how do we usually deal with this when it comes to psychiatry? There are so many different types of strategies, and you can either have therapy, or you can have medicine, or you can have a combination of it. But the goal is to develop a feeling of safeness and warmth, and to feel connected with other people again, and feel like you're able to communicate with other people without having to resort to violence towards yourself. There's a bit of cognitive therapy where people need to realize that the self-harming is something that you don't deserve, and it's something that's not a solution to your problems. It feels like a temporary relief, but at the end of the day, it's only temporary. So if you're feeling really sad or angry or stressed, it's not really going to make up for anything. So of course that's one thing, and secondly, it's also other people don't want to see you harming yourself. People are worried about you, people care about you. Realizing something like that is also really important. And then after that, you can deal with actually preventing it. I mean, it's not as easy as you think it is. A lot of people tend to forget in the moment because they're so overwhelmed that they're not supposed to be doing it, or they start dissociating, and by the time that it's over, it's already been done. So even if you've dealt with self-harm in the past, or you're still going through it right now, that's not your fault. It's kind of crappy that apparently you felt the need that this is the way to cope with your problems and your negative feelings, but it's not something that other people should blame you for. And the most important thing is that you need to deal with it so it won't be an issue later on in life. I'm not really a big expert on anything concerning psychiatry since I'm not a psychiatrist, but I've been working at a child and adolescent psychiatry clinic for the last couple of months of that, and one of the departments of that clinic that I've been involved with is the dialectic behavioral therapy department, which is kind of a therapy that a lot of people use to treat personality disorders, specifically borderline personality disorders, because they're the ones who usually have a lot of trouble dealing with their emotions and dealing with impulsive behavior that might kind of sabotage them in the end. So I'm kind of hoping that other people will at least feel some validation from my words in one way or another.